Imagine this. You wake up with nothing more than a mild headache, the kind you've had 100 times before. You walk into your kitchen. Sunlight spills through the window. The coffee is still brewing. You open the medicine cabinet without thinking, reach for the same bottle you've trusted for years, twist off the cap, swallow 2 capsules with a glass of water, and unknowingly sign your own death warrant. No warning, no pain at first. No masked stranger hiding outside your house, no one breaking through your door, because the killer was already waiting, not in your home, but on the shelf where you bought the medicine. In the autumn of 1982, an invisible murderer transformed one of America's most trusted painkillers into a weapon. He didn't stalk his victims, he didn't choose them, he never learned their names. They were selected by chance, the moment they reached for a bottle. Within just 72 hours, 7 completely innocent people were dead. Different neighborhoods, different families, different lives. Yet every single one of them made the exact same decision, to take something they believed would make them feel better. Instead, it killed them. Even more terrifying, the killer never watched them die. He didn't need to. He simply placed death on a pharmacy shelf and waited. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no surveillance cameras, no struggle. Just ordinary people walking into ordinary stores, buying ordinary medicine before returning home to die. The investigation that followed would become one of the largest criminal investigations in American history. It would change the pharmaceutical industry forever. It would rewrite federal law, and it would permanently alter the way every person in the world opens a bottle of medicine. Even today, every foil seal, every plastic safety ring, every tamper-proof package exists because of what happened during those 3 horrifying days. But before America understood what was happening, before police realized they weren't dealing with natural deaths, before doctors discovered the poison, there was only confusion, because the first victim looked like nothing more than a sick little girl. On the morning of September 29, 1982, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman woke up with a sore throat. Nothing unusual. Summer had faded into autumn. Children across Chicago were returning to school. Colds were everywhere. Mary's parents weren't worried. Like millions of parents before them, they reached into the medicine cabinet and picked up a familiar red and white bottle. Extra-strength Tylenol. It was one of the most trusted medicines in America. Doctors recommended it. Families kept it in nearly every home. There was absolutely no reason to question it. Mary swallowed a single capsule. Then she walked toward the bathroom. Moments later, her parents heard something hit the floor. They rushed in. Mary was lying motionless beside the sink. She wasn't breathing. Paramedics fought desperately to save her. Doctors searched for answers. But nothing made sense. Healthy children don't simply collapse and die within minutes of taking medicine for a cold. There had to be another explanation. Except there wasn't. Because while doctors were trying to understand how one little girl could die so suddenly, someone else, just a few miles away, had already swallowed the same invisible killer. The second death. At first, everyone believed Mary Kellerman's death was a tragic medical mystery. Doctors searched for hidden illnesses, a rare infection, an undiagnosed heart condition, anything that could explain why a healthy 12-year-old girl had died within minutes. No one suspected murder. Because how could they? There were no signs of violence, no wounds, no intruder, no struggle. Just a bottle of medicine sitting quietly on a bathroom counter. Then, only a few hours later, everything changed. Across the city, 27-year-old Adam Janus finished another ordinary shift at work. He was known as a hard-working postal worker, reliable, friendly, the kind of man who rarely complained. That afternoon, he mentioned a slight pain in his chest. Nothing alarming, just the soreness that comes after lifting heavy mail bags all day. He stepped into his kitchen, opened the medicine cabinet, and reached for a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol. 2 capsules, a glass of water. Then he lay down on the couch, expecting to feel better within minutes. Instead, his breathing slowed. His skin began to lose its color. Before anyone realized something was terribly wrong, Adam was dead. His family couldn't understand it. Neither could the doctors. A healthy 27-year-old man, gone in less than an hour. The hospital staff searched for answers. Heart attack? A hidden disease? An allergic reaction? Nothing fit. Nothing made sense. But the nightmare was only beginning. That evening, the Janus family gathered together in grief. The house was filled with silence. Some cried. Some stared blankly at the floor. Others tried to comfort one another without understanding what had just happened. On the kitchen counter, the same bottle of Tylenol still stood exactly where Adam had left it. No one looked at it twice. Why would they? It was medicine, not evidence. Adam's younger brother, Stanley, had developed a headache from the stress. Someone handed him the bottle. He swallowed 2 capsules. His wife, Teresa, only 19 years old, took 1 capsule as well. For a few moments, everything seemed normal. Then Stanley suddenly grabbed his chest. Teresa collapsed almost at the same time. Panic exploded inside the house. Family members screamed for help. Ambulances rushed through the streets for the second time that day. Doctors watched in disbelief as 2 more perfectly healthy people arrived with the exact same mysterious symptoms. Both had taken medicine from the same bottle. Both were dying. Stanley fought for 2 days. Teresa survived only until the following morning. Within 48 hours, 3 members of the same family were gone. Not because of a disease, not because of an accident, because of something hidden inside a bottle sitting on a kitchen counter. Now the impossible could no longer be ignored. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't bad luck. Somewhere, something was killing people, and nobody knew what it was. While investigators raced to understand the connection, more families across Chicago were unknowingly reaching for the exact same medicine. The countdown had already begun. The Invisible Killer. By the evening of September 29th, Chicago had already lost 4 lives. 4 ordinary people. 4 completely unrelated victims. And still, no one knew they had been murdered. Doctors compared medical reports. Emergency rooms exchanged phone calls. Investigators searched for anything the victims had in common. Different neighborhoods, different ages, different lifestyles. There was no shared workplace, no shared restaurant, no shared event. Nothing, until someone asked a simple question. What medication did they take? The answer was exactly the same. Extra-strength Tylenol. Suddenly, every death that had seemed impossible became part of something much darker. Police rushed to the Janus family's home. The bottle sitting on the kitchen counter was no longer medicine. It was evidence. The capsules were rushed to a laboratory. Scientists carefully opened one. What they found sent shock waves through every person in the room. The white powder inside wasn't medicine. It was potassium cyanide, one of the fastest and most lethal poisons known. A poison so powerful that once swallowed, there was almost no chance of survival. Within minutes, the human body begins to shut down. Cells can no longer use oxygen. The brain suffocates. The heart follows. Death comes frighteningly fast. Each capsule contained far more cyanide than necessary to kill. Whoever had prepared them hadn't wanted victims to suffer. He wanted certainty. 1 capsule, 1 death. No mistakes. The discovery changed everything. This wasn't a manufacturing accident. This wasn't contaminated medicine leaving a factory. Someone had done this on purpose. But how? Investigators immediately traced every bottle, different pharmacies, different suburbs, different delivery routes, different shipment dates. The bottles had never traveled together, which meant the poison had never entered the factory. The killer had done something far more terrifying. He had walked into local pharmacies, just like every other customer. He had quietly taken bottles off the shelves, opened them somewhere else, removed the original capsules, filled them with deadly poison, closed them again, returned to the stores, and calmly placed them back among hundreds of untouched bottles. No one noticed. No alarms sounded. No cameras followed him. To every customer, the bottles looked perfect, exactly the way they had left the factory. Because in 1982, medicine bottles had almost no security. No plastic safety ring, no foil seal, no warning if someone had already opened the bottle. You could twist off the cap, open a capsule with your fingers, close everything again, and no one would ever know. It was the perfect crime. Not because it was impossible to solve, but because nobody had ever imagined someone would attack complete strangers through a bottle of pain medicine. Then, the nightmare grew even worse. While police were testing bottles, another victim died. Then another. Mary McFarland, Paula Prince, Mary Reiner. Different homes, different stores, different lives. Exactly the same ending. By the time authorities understood what was happening, 7 innocent people had already lost theirs. And somewhere, walking freely through the streets of Chicago, the killer already knew his plan had worked. A city consumed by fear. On the morning of September 30th, Chicago woke up to a nightmare. Television broadcasts interrupted their regular programming. Radio stations repeated the same warning every few minutes. Newspapers rushed out special editions before sunrise. The message was simple: do not take Tylenol. Not today, not tonight, not until further notice. No one knew how many poisoned bottles were still sitting on pharmacy shelves. No one knew how many people had already bought them. And no one knew who would be next. Within hours, panic spread faster than the poison itself. Police officers stormed into pharmacies. Store employees began clearing shelves. Shopping carts filled with bottles that only yesterday had been trusted by millions. Now, every single one looked like a potential murder weapon. Customers watched in silence. Some dropped the medicine they were about to buy. Others rushed home, desperate to check the bottles in their own medicine cabinets. Families searched kitchen drawers, bathroom shelves, bedside tables, throwing away every bottle they could find. No one cared how much it had cost. No one wanted to take the risk. Emergency phone lines became overwhelmed. Poison control centers received thousands of calls. Hospitals prepared for hundreds of new victims. Doctors stayed on alert around the clock. Parents held their children close. Neighbors knocked on each other's doors. Do you still have Tylenol in your house? It became the question everyone asked. Then, Johnson & Johnson faced a decision that would define the company's future. Legally, they weren't responsible. The poison hadn't entered the bottles at the factory. Someone had tampered with the product after they reached store shelves. But legal responsibility wasn't enough. If even one poisoned bottle remained on a shelf, someone else could die. So the company made a decision almost no corporation had ever made before. They recalled everything. Not one shipment, not one city, not one batch. Every single bottle of Tylenol across the United States. More than 31 million bottles. A recall worth over $100 million. At the time, it was one of the largest product recalls in American history. Not because the company had made a mistake, but because saving lives mattered more than saving money. Business schools still study that decision today. Yet despite the recall, fear refused to disappear because people had realized something terrifying. The danger wasn't Tylenol. The danger was trust. If someone could secretly poison medicine, what else could they poison? Food? Candy? Baby formula? Anything sitting on a shelf suddenly felt dangerous. America had entered an age of suspicion. As October approached, another tradition began to unravel: Halloween. Parents looked at bowls of wrapped candy with fear. Children who had spent weeks planning costumes were told they couldn't go trick-or-treating. Across parts of the country, Halloween celebrations were canceled. Others continued under heavy police supervision. It wasn't because candy had been poisoned. It was because, after Chicago, People no longer believed sealed products were automatically safe. Fear had escaped the pharmacy. Now, it lived everywhere. But while millions of Americans were throwing away medicine, watching the news, and locking their doors, one person, somewhere, was watching too. The killer. Perhaps sitting in a living room, perhaps eating dinner, perhaps smiling, as an entire nation searched for someone who had already disappeared without leaving a single trace. The letter. For weeks, the investigation consumed America. The FBI, local police, the Food and Drug Administration. Every agency searched for the same person. The one who had quietly walked into pharmacies, turned medicine into poison, and disappeared. Thousands of tips poured in. People reported suspicious neighbors. Strangers called hotlines claiming they knew the killer. Every lead seemed promising, until it wasn't. Then, a letter arrived. Not at a police station, not at FBI headquarters, but at the offices of Johnson & Johnson, the company that made Tylenol. Inside was a chilling message. The writer claimed responsibility for the poisonings. He demanded $1 million. If the money was paid, the killings would stop. The letter was signed with a name, James William Lewis. For investigators, it felt like the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The FBI moved quickly. Lewis was tracked down and arrested. He had a complicated past. He had used fake identities. He had previous criminal convictions, the kind of man investigators naturally looked at twice. For a brief moment, many believed the mystery was over. America believed the monster had finally been found. But investigations don't run on suspicion. They run on evidence. And evidence was exactly what investigators couldn't find. They searched for fingerprints. Nothing. They searched for witnesses. Nothing. They searched for the place where the capsules had been opened. Nothing. They searched for the cyanide. Nothing. They couldn't place Lewis inside a single pharmacy. They couldn't prove he had touched a single bottle. They couldn't prove he had poisoned even one capsule. What they could prove was that he had written the extortion letter. That crime alone sent him to prison. But writing a letter is not the same as committing 7 murders. Lewis admitted sending the letter, but he denied the killings, over and over again. In interviews, during investigations, even decades later, he repeated the same sentence. I didn't poison the Tylenol. Was he lying? Or was he simply an opportunist trying to profit from someone else's crime? No one knew. Years passed. Technology improved. DNA testing became more advanced. Investigators reopened old evidence. Boxes that had gathered dust for decades were opened once again. Scientists searched for fingerprints, genetic material, anything the investigators of 1982 could never have seen. Every advancement brought hope. Every new test raised expectations. And every time, the same answer returned. Nothing. No name, no undeniable proof. Only questions. James William Lewis died in 2023. He was 76 years old. He died without ever being charged with the murders. To this day, officially, the person who poisoned those bottles has never been identified, which leaves investigators with a question that has haunted them for more than 40 years. If James Lewis wasn't the killer, then who was? Because someone, somewhere, prepared those capsules. Someone carried them into pharmacies. Someone placed them back on the shelves. And someone walked away unnoticed, while 7 strangers unknowingly carried death back to their own homes. The legacy of 7 lives. The killer vanished, but the consequences never did. Before 1982, medicine bottles opened with nothing more than a twist of the cap. No seal, no warning, no protection. After the Tylenol murders, everything changed. Congress passed new federal laws. Product tampering became a serious federal crime. Pharmaceutical companies redesigned their packaging from the ground up. Plastic safety rings, foil seals, protective wrappers. Features so common today that most of us never stop to think why they exist. But they exist because 7 ordinary people never came home. Every time you open a bottle of medicine, you're looking at the legacy of a crime that was never solved. And perhaps that is the most unsettling part of this story. Not the cyanide, not the investigation, not even the unanswered questions, but the simplicity. A bottle, sitting quietly on a shelf, looking exactly like every other bottle beside it, waiting for someone to trust it. Because evil doesn't always arrive wearing a mask. Sometimes it waits inside the most ordinary object in your home. And somewhere, whether the killer died decades ago or lived a long, ordinary life, one truth remains unchanged. 7 families never got their answers. America never learned the killer's name. And more than 40 years later, one of the most terrifying unsolved crimes in history is still waiting for someone to solve it.